Hello friends, welcome to my channel Vedic Astrology Guru. I am your host Gaurav. Well, on this channel we will be discussing Indian Vedic astrology, its deepest secrets and a lot of advanced techniques. So to keep up with the latest content, kindly subscribe to my channel, and if you like a video, kindly leave one of your special comments. So, insights. Insights are interesting astrological videos. These are researches and my own experiences learning the Vedic astrology system since past 20 years. So in Insights today, we will be discussing the second wave. In second wave, we will be discussing why obstructive houses in a horoscope were classified. Now there are few houses in a horoscope for few different ascendants which are obstructive. Well, obstructive houses in Vedic astrology mean Badhak Sthana. Obstructive meaning Badhak and Sthana meaning house. So these were created, classified by our sages thousands and thousands of years back. They were very wise to formulate these houses because these houses have very special results in one's horoscope. So to understand the concept of obstructive houses for various ascendants, we will delve further into the subject. For these four ascendants, Aries, Cancer, Libra and Capricorn, the 11th house becomes obstructive. These four ascendants fall in the category of movable signs, and for these four movable signs, these four different ascendants, the 11th house becomes obstructive house. The 11th house which represents your desires, your deepest temptations, this becomes obstructive for these four ascendants. The second category of signs is Taurus, Leo, Scorpio and Aquarius. Now these four ascendants fall in the category of fixed signs. So for these four ascendants, the 9th house becomes an obstructive house which represents your destiny, your luck, your religion and your guru, the perceptor. So 9th house for these ascendant becomes obstructive house. And the last category, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius and Pisces. For these four ascendants, the 7th house, the house which represents marital relationships and extramarital relationships, this house becomes obstructive. For these four ascendants which fall in the category of dual signs. So these four are dual signs and the 7th house for these four ascendants will be obstructive. Now why these three houses for various ascendants? The 7th house, the 9th house and the 11th house have been stated, have been classified as obstructive house. To understand this, we will have to delve further into Hindu mythology to understand the concept. So, according to Hindu mythology, Shiva is the source of all the energy in the universe. So all that matter which is present in the cosmos is also present in a human body, and all that matter which is present in a human body is also present in the universe. Now there is a very old shloka, the Sanskrit shloka which mentions this, that is Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande, which simply says, as is the individual, so is the universe. As is the universe, so is the individual. Now this shloka comes from the Vedas in India, which are very primitive. So this simply narrates that whatever elements are present in a human body are also present in the cosmos. So this energy, this Shiva energy, the latent energy of Shiva is represented by the houses of a horoscope. To understand this concept, this Vedic concept, this mythological concept, we have to infuse this system in astrology. To understand this, I will show you the astrological theory of this. So, the latent energy of Shiva is represented by the first house, the fifth house and the ninth house. The first house, which represents your own self, which represents your soul. The fifth house, which represents your mind. The fifth house also represents your meditation. The ninth house represents your destiny, your religion and your guru, the preceptor. So these three fiery trines of dharma represent the latent energy of Shiva. So now coming to the next category, the Shakti trines. Now these three houses are the Shakti trines. Now Shakti is your, basically these three houses, the Shakti represents your evident energy. So Shakti is the evident energy which is represented from the third house, the seventh house and the 11th house. The third house, which represents your courage, your actions. The seventh house represents marital relationships. The 11th house represents your desire, your deep-rooted temptations, your avarice, your cupidity. So these three houses represent the Shakti. To understand this further, the concept of Shiva and Shakti, I will bring you further to a Vedic concept which simply narrates the four Purusharthas which are very important for a human being in his life. The four Purusharthas are basically objectives of a human pursuit which are mentioned in our Vedas. The first being Dharma, which signifies moral values or act of righteousness. The second, Artha, signifies economic or financial values. The third, Kam, signifies desire or psychological values. The fourth, Moksha, signifies liberation or spiritual values. Now our sages were very wise to incorporate these four Purusharthas in astrology. They have infused these very wisely into a horoscope. Now Dharma, Artha, Kam and Moksha, as you can see in this slide. Dharma, Artha, Kam and Moksha. Dharma, Arth, Kam, Moksha. Now all these four Purusharthas are fixed for every house. They will not change for any of the horoscope. Only your signs and ascendants will shift, but these Purusharthas will remain fixed. So previously we were discussing the Shiva trine, which was represented by the first house. Now, which were represented by the first, the fifth and the ninth. These three trines are the Dharma trines, and the Shakti trine, which was represented by the third, the seventh and the 11th, which are represented by the Kam Purushartha. So to understand this, how these two trines work, we have to understand further. So in this slide, we can see a submerged trine. We can see both the trines intermingled with each other. The Shiv trine representing the 1, 5 and 9. The Shakti trine representing the 3rd, 7th and 11th. Now in these trines, basically balance is required. Now a yogi or a person who is trying to attain highest consciousness, who is trying to attain liberation, who is trying to achieve a higher knowledge, the balance of these houses is of great essence. Now this balance is all we talk about, is neutrality. Being neutral is the most essence of being balanced with these trines. Even Gita, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, also mentions about neutrality. So in Bhagavad Gita, the chapter 2nd, verse 15, it clearly mentions the man whom these do not trouble nor pain. Hey Arjun, among men, the firm and wise, who is equal in pleasure and suffering, makes himself apt for immortality. So basically, simply saying, he says a person who is equal in pleasure and suffering, a person who is not affected by his own karmic pattern or actions of other people. He is not being overwhelmed by happiness, or he is not feeling grief or sorrow by the actions of other people. He who is equal in pleasure and suffering is apt for immortality. Immortality being the liberation, the attainment of higher consciousness, attainment of higher knowledge. So there is another verse which also mentions the same. Chapter 9 verse 9, it states, "Nor do these work bind me, for I am seated as if indifferent above, unattached to those actions." Now this again clearly mentions that the person is unattached to actions he is doing or actions done by others, and he is indifferent, then he is not bound by any of the boundaries in life, then there is nothing which can stop him to achieve that liberation, to achieve that salvation, to achieve that higher knowledge, higher consciousness. So the balance of life is of utmost importance. Being neutral is of highest essence. To balance the act of Shiva trine and the Shakti trine in a horoscope and in one's life is of utmost importance. There is a saying, excess of everything is bad. So is balance required. So a person who is trying to balance the acts, the characteristics of these 6 houses, which is represented by Shiva trine and Shakti trine, that balancing act by a person is called being a yogi. So that person is basically committed to the highest being to attain that highest form. So that balance is of utmost importance to attain that liberation, that highest knowledge. So the first house of the horoscope, the ascendant, is the first house representing the Shiva trine. Now this house represents your own self. This represents your own body. Without a body, without a human form, nothing is achievable in this material world, even be it salvation. So the first house is an important house. Now the third house, this is the first house of Shakti trine. Now this third house represents your efforts or your actions, which are the very basic root, like bathing, brushing, combing, and the morning rituals that every human being performs. And these rituals do not sentimentalize a person. Even the food consumed is very plain and simple by such a yogi. And this does not create any emotional displacement in that kind of a person. So all these actions performed from the third house are represented by the first trine of the Shakti trine. Now the second trine house of the Shiva trine, the fifth house. Now the fifth house represents your mantra based chanting, your meditation, contemplation, virtuousness. Now all these are very important to excel and elevate oneself to attain that higher realization, to attain that higher self. So the fifth house is an important house of the Shiva Trikona, the Shiva trine. Now the seventh house. The seventh house is the second house of the Shakti trine. This is an obstructive house. This is a very important house. Now this house represents your carnal pleasures. Overindulgence in this activities of these houses, this seventh house, will definitely create new karmic cycles. It will create new karmic efflux for the native. Why? Because the ascendant is about knowing oneself, because ascendant represents the self and the seventh house represents the other. So first house, the ascendant, is about knowing yourself, and the seventh house is about knowing the other. When there is an overindulgence in the activities of the seventh house, the activities of knowing the other person, this creates new karmic cycles for a person, which becomes obstructive in that attainment of the higher self. So this is how the 7th house becomes an obstructive house. Now the 9th house of the horoscope, the 9th house of a Kal Purusha chart, the 3rd house of the Shiva trine is one of the most important houses in a horoscope. Now this house represents your guru, your preceptor. This house represents your religion. This house represents your destiny. The karmic efflux created in your previous lives, which is represented in the form of destiny in this life. Now this is a very important house because this is an obstructive house, the 9th house in your horoscope. So this house is very important in balancing that precision needed for self-attainment. But once that self-attainment is achieved, the religion becomes just another ritual for such a yogi or such a person. Religion becomes just another ritual like bathing or brushing, which do not sentimentalize a person. The second thing represented is the guru, the preceptor. The preceptor may have helped the native to achieve self-realization. He may have helped him excel on that path. But once that is achieved, then there is no need for the guru to stay attached with his pupil, because that will create new karmic cycles in both their lives. So guru is a person who will help you excel, but he is not a person who will complete that journey or who will stay in that journey along with you forever. Now the third thing represented by the 9th house is destiny, luck, fate. Now destiny, luck or fate are of least importance to such a person who is pursuing highest realization, who is pursuing the highest knowledge, self-attainment, or who is trying to pursue liberation. For such a person, destiny is of no purpose. Now there is a saying, everything has its own end and excess of everything is bad. So a person who has achieved that self-realization, a yogi who has achieved that self-realization, so delving further into that religion becomes non-consequential. But if he is further attached to the religion, then it will create karmic cycles for him. If that person is keeping bonds with his guru or preceptor, then that will create karmic cycles for him. Or if he feels that destiny has an important role for that person to play in his life or other people's life, then in that case the karmic cycles will be regenerated and the 9th house will become an obstructive house for such a person. Now the 11th house of the Kal Purusha chart, the 3rd house and the most powerful trine of the Shakti trine. Now this 11th house is an obstructive house. This house represents your desires, greed, your cupidity, your avarice, your deep-set, deep-rooted temptations. Now this house is a huge pitfall for even the most diligent of yogis who are trying to attain self-realization, who are trying to attain salvation. Because once off-balanced, then that pursual of self-attainment or highest knowledge, that pursual may turn into a displaced desire or temptation to attain that highest knowledge. Now once off-balanced, now this displacement of the balance of the 11th house is something that creates obstruction for even the most sacred and masters of the art of self-attainment. So this pursual may turn into a temptation and a desire. Now this is a huge pitfall. Even the most diligent yogi may not realize and this is how the 11th house becomes an obstructive house in a horoscope. So it is to deepest understanding that being neutral and maintaining that balance is of utmost significance to strike that balance of actions in the Shiva and Shakti trines. Now the Shiva and Shakti trines are about absorbing and utilizing something from the first, the third and the fifth house, and expelling something from the 7th, the 9th and the 11th house. This balancing of absorbing the necessary and expelling the unnecessary is the striking chord of Shiva and Shakti trines to attain that self-realization. If misbalanced or tipped off, then these houses, the 7th, the 9th and the 11th house, become obstructive in Vedic astrology.